Hi, my name is Katie. This is Levy Park On Demand Storytime and Craft. Today I'm going to be reading The Little Acorn. When I was just an acorn, nobody noticed me. I watched the world below go by from high up in the tree. I nestled under cozy leaves and sheltered from the rain, growing fat and shiny when the sun came out again. When the summer faded, the leaves turned golden brown. "Bye-bye, acorn," said the leaves, floating to the ground. "Wait for me," I called, then ready, steady, jump. And I landed with a thump. Squirrel was collecting nuts for his winter store. He hid me carefully away beneath the forest floor. Underground, everything was snugly and still. I waited very patiently, time to pass until I felt a sudden change beginning deep inside. "I'm feeling so peculiar. What's happening?" I cried. "You're growing up," said the worms, all wiggling about. "When acorns fall into the soil, at some point they will sprout." I giggled as I felt tickly, tiny shoots, and before I knew it, I had sprouted little roots. I started to stretch up, wiggling left and right, reaching up and down till I pushed out into the light. Warmed by gentle sunbeams, my little leaves unfurled. I was so excited to be back out in the world. As the weeks and months passed by, I grew and grew and grew. Squirrel spotted me and said, "I've been looking everywhere for you." The season changed, and so did I, in sunshine, rain, and snow. My branches stretched, my trunk grew tall, my roots spread far below. Among my sturdy branches, the birds built cozy nests. My twigs and leaves made soft, warm beds for my feathered guests. Spiders weaved their sticky webs and beetles scurried by. Squirrels scampered playfully and made their homes up high. The creatures of the forest had never seen a finer tree. I wondered, would there ever be another one like me? Then one breezy morning, I woke up with a yawn. I stretched my branches, and out jumped a special little acorn. Every oak tree starts life as a seed called an acorn, growing on an adult tree. The acorn drops off into the soil where it sprouts roots. As the roots grow down, a leafy shoot sprouts up, growing taller and taller. The acorn is now a baby tree called a seedling. It continues to grow bigger and bigger until it is a new oak tree and grows acorns of its own.
I hope you all enjoyed The Little Acorn, read by Katie. It was such a fun book. So now we have a craft that we're gonna do where we're gonna create our own tree with some beautiful leaves. So the supplies that we're gonna need for today's craft, this is the finished product here. This is what we're making. We're going to need some thick stock paper. Watercolor paper is best if you have it because we're gonna be using some water today. A spray bottle filled with water. A permanent marker for our tree trunk, and permanent is important because it's going to help the ink not run. Some colored tissue paper and whatever your favorite colors are. Some scissors to cut up the tissue paper. And then lastly, some newspaper or some paper bags to go ahead and put down on your table to help ensure that we don't make too big of a mess. So to go ahead and get started, I went ahead and took a couple of sheets of newspaper. These are pretty thick. There are a couple pages that I spread out on my table here. And then I went ahead and used some rocks being outside just to make sure that my paper doesn't blow away. So to go ahead and make this craft, what we're going to do is we're going to start with a blank sheet of watercolor paper. I'm going to go ahead and grab my permanent marker here, and what we're going to do is we're going to draw our tree trunk. So this is where you get to be really, really creative and decide how you want your tree trunk to look. I think today I am feeling a couple of tree trunks. So I'm just going to go ahead and start with some long lines and go ahead and make the branches sticking out, make them a little bit tall in the trees. And then I have a bunch of little branches poking off to the sides. Kind of like you would see the trees at Levy Park, where we have lots of oak trees here, lots of really long branches. And maybe you have some oak trees around your neighborhood as well. And as we learned from the book, oak trees come from acorns. So you can really make whatever design you want. I'm going to go ahead and color in my trunks here. So I have a nice dark line that's going to hold up and make a good base for my tree leaves. What's super, super fun about this craft is we get to play a little bit with water and colors and colored paper, and it has this really neat watercolor effect when we're done. So this craft turns out really, really cool without even having to use any colored markers. So it's a way to just kind of be creative and recreate some of the colors that we see out in nature. Although we're getting a little bit of cooler temperatures right now, the leaves are still pretty green in this area, but we're starting to see a little bit of red and orange sneaking through. So for me, I feel pretty satisfied with my tree so far. I have a couple tree trunks and I have these wide branches here, and that's how I'm going to go ahead and start. I hope that your trees are looking nice as well. So for our next step is we're going to grab your favorite color tissue paper. And there's two ways that you can do it. I had worked earlier and made some small cuts. So if you want to go ahead and create some cuts of tissue paper, you can go ahead and do that in some smaller sections. But you want to definitely get that prep. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to actually just tear these in half. And so I'm going to use these pieces here. You can create and pick any size you want for your tissue paper. I'm going to actually give them another tear. And what this is going to do is going to just make sure that I can kind of put them all over my paper. So the first step that you want to do for your tissue paper is you're going to want to go ahead and you're going to wet your paper just lightly. So I'm going to do just a couple little baby sprays, just a small mist. And then you want to start placing your favorite colored tissue paper, and this water is going to help them stick right to the paper. I loved the colors in the Little Acorn book. I liked the red, I love the orange, and of course those beautiful green leaves. And as we know with colors, you can get colors when you're putting them together. So if I do some yellow and put some blue next to it, when this craft is finished, it'll have a nice little green hue. Let me add some more red, and if your papers are moving around like mine here, just give it a little bit more water, and that's going to help it stick to the paper. So you can go ahead and play around, get creative, put as many pieces down as you want, and that's going to kind of be your canvas and a good starting point for this craft. Here we go. Add a little bit more water so my paper stays, and I'm gonna just fill it in a little bit more. Okay, so now that you have the amount of paper that you want on your design, here's where we really have a lot of fun, and this is where that watercolor paper is gonna come in handy if you have it. You're gonna now take your spray bottle and you're gonna spray it a ton until it gets nice and soaked. And what you can see as I'm spraying is you're starting to see the colors from the watercolor paper and from the tissue paper. They're starting to kind of run together. So you're gonna get this like really cool effect from this watercolor paper. So you wanna go ahead and let that water sit and soak, and go ahead and spray it as much as you want till you see those colors kind of start to move in around. And then you can go ahead and take the water and let it bleed a little bit. See how it's bleeding right there? That's just gonna give you this really cool, beautiful watercolor effect all over your trees. So now that you have enough water and you have the kind of the colors that are starting to bleed, what you're gonna do is you're gonna let this sit until it gets all nice and dry. And then when it's dry, what we're gonna do is we're gonna remove all the paper and we're gonna get a really awesome tree just like this. So we're gonna go ahead and let this dry and we'll come back to it. So I've waited a little bit for my tree craft to dry, and we've dried pretty well. And so now what I'm gonna do is remove all of the tissue paper, and what's left is this really cool watercolor effect on my trees. So I hope that yours turned out just as cool as this, and you got to see all the amazing fall colors that we got to see in the book as well for Little Acorn. Thank you so much for joining us today for our family story time and craft. Feel free to share your creations on our social media. You can tag us in our photos at Levy Park Houston, and visit us at levyparkhouston.org for our full programming calendar and more programs like these. Thank you so much. See you next time.